Amen. Whose question this is? Someone wrote it. Who? It's in blue, yeah. Is that yours? It's blue.
It's red letters. Maybe the back of it is red. It's red.
Okay, I'll trust you. No, it just says answer. Explanation mark, explanation mark. So I thought I'd better answer it. If the man of sin and the king of the north, the Dark Ages, was the Pope, who is the king of the north and the man of sin in our time? So why are we asking the question?
So if we are saying, I always say the king of the north is Trump, because he's in more with Putin. And we say that's the king of the north and the, oh, sorry. So if we are associating the king of the north as Trump, and is at war with Russia, with Putin, is he also the man of sin?
Sorry?
Because in the Dark Ages, the king of the north was a pope, but he's also the man of sin. So does that mean if the king of the north is Trump, that's the question mark, is he also the man of sin? Or is the pope still the man of sin?
Sister Emma?
Need the mic, please.
It's right here in front of you.
The mic is there.
Please hit on.
It's not on from the machine.
And was the Pope the King of the North in the Dark Ages?
No, sorry, repeat what he said, anything he said.
Yeah, we didn't hear anything.
Oh, that's all I said. I was just adding to what you'd said already. Yeah. I just said, because you said that the Pope was the King of the North and the man of sin in the Dark Ages, and I'm saying, was he the King of the North in the Dark Ages? That's all, yeah. Clarification. I think it stems from the armies of Rome and the King of the North. I think that's what it stems from. The question is, we've always taught that the USA was the armies of the North in 1140, and now we're saying Trump is the King of the North, as opposed to that America is the armies, and it's that transition. I don't know if is that the question? I know it's slightly different because you're saying man of sin, but I don't know.
No what, sorry?
Sorry, Emma, could you repeat what you're saying? Sorry.
I'm saying I thought it was connected to the fact that we always taught that the King of the North was the papacy and the army of Rome was America in Daniel 11 verse 40. And now we're saying Trump's the King of the North. When did that transition happen? How did he become King of the North?
Okay, so I wasn't really thinking about the armies
Okay,
of
that was
Rome.
my question.
I didn't have that in mind.
Okay, so you man of sin, it's a separate question.
Yeah.
Is this like a collusion? Because you live together. You seem to know what each other's talking about.
Oh no, because we talked about some of these things before. That's why.
So I presume you both have an opinion on it.
Derail this question.
I don't know.
Okay, I guess I don't know either. But there are some questions we could ask ourselves. Sorry? If you go to the Dark Ages, Revelation chapter 11, you have a great city which is spiritually known as Sodom and Egypt. Yeah? And you recognize that as being
King of the South.
well, France.
France, yeah.
So do you recognize that to be the king of the south? The way you said it is you do.
Yes.
So France is the king of the south. When did it become the king of the south?
I don't know.
So you know that France was one of the premier countries, in fact one of the first countries, if not the first, to support the papacy. 496, 508, 538 you could argue. You agree with that?
Yeah.
Clovis,
Yeah.
taking of the Visigoths. Daniel 12, verse 11, I think.
Yeah.
So you agree with that? So was it the king of the south then, when it was doing that?
No, I don't see it as the King of the South.
Why?
Was it at war with the King of the North or Rome or the Pope?
It was the first son of the papacy, I think. Is that the title it had? First son of the papacy, I think. Something along those lines. Clovis, that was.
Well, probably because if you're saying he was supportive of
Yeah.
the papacy,
Yeah.
because like we see Trump
He became a
supportive.
Catholic.
Okay, maybe.
Maybe what?
Because we see Putin supporting Trump in 2016, so we see the King of the South at one time supporting the King of the North. Before like the fighting against each other, so maybe you can say that's the beginning.
So you might argue, so you're arguing that the king of the south, that France was the king of the south at the beginning of the 1260, and it was the king of the south all the way through.
I'm not sure. I'm not too clued up on the history.
So Revelation 11, what history is that?
The French Revolution.
So the French Revolution. So when does France become Sodom and Egypt? Before the revolution or in the revolution?
From what I understand, is it before the revolution?
So France was always Egypt and Sodom.
No.
So how could it be? So you say
Or did they become Egypt and Sodom during the revolution?
that's my question.
I'm not sure.
Okay, why does it identify it as being Sodom and Egypt?
Because of the what's that word? Licentiousness.
What's that? Not the definition of what that is. What word is it attached to? Sodom or Egypt?
Sodom.
Okay, so
It's
Sodom
immorality.
is licentiousness.
And Egypt for like Pharaoh, when he denied God, he said, "Who is this God that I should obey him?"
Okay, so in 496, 508, who is the god of France?
I don't know.
Well, they just got baptized.
Clovis.
Yeah, Clovis is the king of France and he gets baptized. So who's his god? Or does he have a god?
The papacy.
No, I don't think he thinks the papacy is the god. We did that in A.T. Jones yesterday or this morning sometime. Remember, initially, everybody is okay to have what? God is the king, and then you have a person in between, and then you have the people. Do you remember doing that?
No.
I can't remember. Oh, but why are you doing the breakfast? You mean the class study? Okay, so A.T. Jones makes this argument. There's this hierarchy, and initially, and I think the point was made that even the Pope recognises it, that he's the vicar of what? Of whom?
Rome.
No, the vicar of Christ.
Christ, sorry.
The vicar of Christ. He doesn't make himself Christ. He doesn't make himself God. He's just his viceroy or vicegerent here on earth. He's his right-hand man, if you like. He doesn't make himself God. You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so who's the God or the king or that Clovis is going to worship then? Christ? Would you be okay with that? He gets baptized as a Christian.
Okay, Christ.
Yeah? So he's not an atheist. You agree with that? If he's not an atheist, he can't be Egypt. If he's not Egypt, he can't be...
An atheist.
Yeah, that's what I said. No, I said, if he's not Egypt, he's not an atheist. And therefore he can't be... Who rules Egypt?
Pharaoh.
King.
The king of the south.
So he can't be the king of the south at the beginning. You can see,
Okay.
you okay with that?
Yeah.
So he can't always be the king of the south because he's worshipping Christ. He believes in religion.
Yeah.
So there's a change that happens from... If this is the 1260, this is 1798. Does he believe in religion at the beginning?
Yeah.
Does he believe in religion at the end?
No.
When did that change happen? You don't have to give me the date, just the event.
French Revolution.
Okay, so the French Revolution. Rodelio, do you know the date?
For 1773,
1773?
beginning of French Revolution, 1789.
Good. So we'll go with 1789. Could be plus or minus, but most people say 1789. And you can mark 1799, the death of the Pope.
Yeah.
So you've got this 10-year period. So is King of the South here?
Yeah.
So what is it here?
Nothing.
Nothing. Prophet Dede says France is the King of the North.
He's the king of the north.
Okay, even if you don't know the history, even if you don't know the logic, just juxtapose them. If you've got no religion, you're the King of the South. If you've got religion, it'd be the opposite.
You're the king of the north.
So you'd be the King of the North. So France would be the King of the North in that history.
Okay. So you're saying there's a transfer from the king of the north to the king of the south.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never seen it like that.
But does that sound reasonable?
I need to think about it.
Think about what?
I need to go into the history, the 538 history.
You don't. The history's there. You know the history. It's Clovis. He gets baptized in 496. He fights the Visigoths. Daniel 12 verse 11. He shall take away the daily and place the abomination that maketh desolate in 538. So there's this transition history. Sorry? Oh, sorry. 811. I'm misreading. Yeah, sorry. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there should be 1,290 days. Did I misquote? 1211 that I'm referring to. I think when it says place, it's 1131 probably. 1131 says place the abomination, and it says set up the abomination. Brother Stephen? Yeah. So I said place, but it's set up, but it's the same event, my understanding is. Some people say 508. I've heard 596, but I'm okay either way. The Battle of the Visigoths is 508. People used to say 596, but I've heard people say it's 508. And 496, yeah. Yeah, some people say 496, but some people say there was a mistake on that and it's 508. So I'm not sure what you need to think about. It supports the papacy at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay?
I think it's just a transference from the king of the north to the king of the south.
Okay, but you agree that he's the king of the south
Yeah,
here?
yeah, I agree that, yeah.
And the characteristic is atheism.
Yeah, yeah.
And he only becomes atheistic in 1789
Yeah.
during the revolution. So he couldn't have been the king of the south before. So what was he before? He was the army of Rome.
Yeah.
Or the papacy. So he's the Pope's army.
Yeah. So he was a part of the king of the north before that then, yeah.
So if you're going to keep the papacy the king of the north, if you're
Yeah.
happy to do that, then he becomes the army of the north.
Yeah.
But if he becomes the king of the south here, what was he before?
King of the north.
So there's good argument to show that he was the king of the north. If you want to use the imagery of marriage, the papacy is the wife and he's the husband, they share a common name. You could argue it from that perspective. Sister?
I just had the same point that
Mike?
was the armies of Rome. That's what
Yeah.
I wanted to say.
So it's the armies of Rome in this history. But there's this church-state relationship.
So the armies, you can say that it's like a marriage then, like the man and the woman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so who's the king of the north in the head up here?
Nebuchadnezzar.
So if that's Nebuchadnezzar, would he be the equivalent of Clovis, or would he be the equivalent of the Pope when you call him the king of the north? Who would he be? Which one of them?
The Pope. I'll say the Pope.
Sorry, who says Pope over here? Pope. And you, Brother Tom? You said Clovis. That's what I thought. Clovis. So kings are state, aren't they?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so if we went to Revelation 17:2, the woman does what in 17:2? Commits fornication with the kings. End of verse 1. I will show you the judgment of the whore that sits upon many waters. And who are the waters that we asked? The waters of the kings. And in verse 2 it says, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of their fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit unto the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-coloured beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So she sits upon water, she commits fornication with the kings, and then she sits on a beast. Verses 1, 2 and 3. So waters equals what?
Kings.
Waters equal
The state.
verse 3. What's she sitting on?
The beast.
So the waters equal,
The beast.
so the waters equal the beast. So the waters, yes, it's verse 15, nations, kingdoms, tongues, all that. But you can have waters, you can have kings, you can have beasts. So we know the beasts are kings.
Yeah.
And we know the beasts are kings because, how do we know the beasts are kings? Which verse?
Number Verse 2.
You'd be proof texting there or repeating enlargement. How do you know for definite? In the
'Cause
chapter
what chapter?
17, it's in the chapter. We discussed the verse already, not today but before. Brother
'Cause
Tom, you can go to verse 9 or verse 10. You probably need verse 10 to just double, but you start in verse 9.
yeah, verse 9.
Yeah? Verse 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. It still doesn't tell you what it is exactly, but verse 10 says, there are 7 kings.
7, yeah.
So you know the 7 heads are 7 kings. So you know the beast is kings.
Yeah.
So if the beast is kings, she's not a king. She's something else. So when we've started calling the papacy the king of the north, I'm not saying it's wrong to do that. But what you see is that our focus upon the church side of that relationship, perhaps our focus has been in the wrong place. And the focus should be on the state side of it, not to diminish the work of the papacy in this history. Because if we just took this as a story of France, and it's not, there are other kingdoms there, once you do that, in this history, who would be the king of the north? That the king of the south is going to fight against. Because as soon as the king of the south comes, he's going to fight against the king of the north.
I don't understand it to be the Pope.
Okay, so you understand it to be the Pope. So I'm not arguing that it's wrong to say that. But all I'm saying in this history, although we focus upon the papacy, you can have an equally strong argument to show that it's the states that are the king of the north.
Okay.
Just like the verse teaches. The verse teach. If we're going to say that woman, if you use the imagery here, and it says the woman here is Mystery Babylon, the papacy, then you know that the beast is not the papacy. The beast is the kings, whereby you get the title King of the North. It's just that in these kingdoms, it's just merged into one, and there's not a clear distinction between king and priest. They all just become one. You see this precipitation out of the state, where you see the church in its visible form here in the feet, where you get iron and clay. So the argument that we make now to say that the United States is the king of the north, with the inference that the papacy is not, isn't that dissimilar to what we've done here in this argument?
Okay. So with that reasoning, we can say that because America is states, so we can apply it as the king of the north then.
Perhaps we might say it this way. Depending upon the story that you're telling, depending on how you juxtapose the two powers, sometimes your focus would be on the papacy, because it's the lead power, even though it's got an army behind it, and the army allows it to be a king, essentially. But sometimes you just look at the state, and then you just say the king of the north is the state, which is what I guess logic would tell you, because kings are state powers, not church powers. And that's what we're doing now. We're saying, who is Russia fighting with? Who is it at war with? It's at war with the United States. Therefore, we're making the United States the king of the north. But if you were to go to Daniel 11 verse 14, it says the king of the south pushed against him, and we're going to make that him the king of the north, then you could argue that the king of the north in this part of the verse, verse 40 part A, would be the papacy. So I think we can understand it both ways.
Okay. How do we see the transfer then from 1798 to Donald Trump, applying him as a king of the north?
So it says that I think it gets difficult when we start using Revelation 17 to depict this story, or Revelation 13, because in Revelation 13 verse 3, I think it's verse 3, and I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So for me, the complexity is juggling these, the heads of the beast, and the woman that rides the beast. And I don't, sometimes it might not be as clear as we think it is. So when it says this beast that comes up out of the sea, there's a lot of discussion of what that beast is. I don't know what you understand that beast to be.
That comes up. Is this the first beast?
Revelation 13 verse 1, the beast that comes out of the sea, or people call it the sea beast, or the leopard-like beast.
Can't think right now.
Is this one here. I don't know if anybody else has got a thought on that. No one's got a comment?
I thought this was the. I believe it was the papacy.
This one here.
Because
That's
it has a
Revelation
wound.
12, 13, 17.
Because one of his heads, it's got a wound, which I believe is 1798.
Say that again. Sorry.
I think I always believed that this was a papacy because of the wound
Okay.
of one of the heads.
So did someone say it's America? I'll just find the Spirit of Prophecy quote if I can. Sorry, does anybody have a comment?
You want the mic?
Sorry, you've got a comment? Oh, just to try and answer my question first, if we're okay to do that. So my question is, this this sea beast, what is it a symbol of? So, Brother Stephen's saying the papacy. Yeah? So let me read the quote to you. This is GC 439, paragraph 1. GC 439, paragraph 1. In chapter 13, verses 1 to 10, is described another beast, like unto a... Sorry? The sea beast, not the earth beast. It's verses 1 to 10. Verse 11 begins to talk about the earth beast. Good? In chapter 13, verses 1 to 10, is described another beast, like unto a leopard, to which the dragon gave his power and his seat and great authority. This symbol, as most Protestants have believed, represents the papacy, which succeeded to the power and seat and authority once held by the ancient Roman Empire. Of the leopard-like beast, it is declared, then she gives some verses. She goes to verse 5, 6 and 7. This prophecy, which is nearly identical with the description of the little horn of Daniel 7, unquestionably points to the papacy. Are you okay with that, Brother Leon? So this papacy. So let me read another Spirit of Prophecy quote. Another one. So this is found in a couple of different places. I'll give you a convenient one. I'll take this from 4SP. Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 4. 4SP 276.1. 4SP 276.1. Tell me when you get there.
Yeah, I'm there.
You there?
In the book of Revelation.
In the book of Revelation, under the symbols of a great red dragon, 1, a leopard-like beast, 2, and a beast with lamb-like horns, 3. So she's talking about 3 beasts. Agree with that? The dragon of 12, the leopard beast of 13, and the earth beast of 13. She calls it lamb-like. 3 beasts. She says, I brought to view those earthly governments which are especially engaged in trampling upon God's law and persecuting his people. So those 3 beasts are what?
One's a dragon.
No.
Earthly governments.
So she says they're governments in one place, and she says it's the papacy in another place.
Yeah.
So you can see how she has 2 different perspectives of the same animal. So we'll leave the dragon and we'll leave the earth beast. This beast here, the beast that comes out of the sea, verse 1, in Spirit of Prophecy Volume 4, she calls it earthly government.
Yeah.
And in Great Controversy, she calls it the papacy.
So she's saying in one application, one's the church, and in the second application, it's the states.
Yeah. So she's using
wow.
it interchangeably. Sister Emma? So I'll read on. I brought to view those earthly governments which are especially engaged in trampling upon God's law and persecuting his people. Their war is carried forward to the close of time. The people of God, symbolized by a holy woman and a child, the children, are greatly in the minority. In the last days, only a remnant exists. John speaks of them as those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. Through the great powers controlled by paganism and the papacy, symbolized by the dragon and the leopard-like beast, Satan for many centuries destroyed God's faithful witnesses. So she uses, sorry? So she identifies that beast as either the papacy or a government state. It seems to be both. And I'm not sure how you understand paganism, if you understand that to be a religion, which is what we suggested the other day. So is it religion, or is it an earthly government, even when you talk about the dragon power?
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody's got a comment on that.
When a nation or a state embraces it, isn't that like dragging
When the government embraces
that religion,
which religion? The paper religion, the bad religion. Okay. Becomes a dragon power, you're saying. I'm just trying to clarify what you're saying.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's the thought that I've had. Because a nation that doesn't have a religion, so when it embraces one, it is part of the dragon power. Which
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
you can say paganism or paganism.
So let me ask you a question. We already did Revelation 17 the other day, and it says there are 7 heads, 5 are fallen, One is and one is yet to come. So we're here on the sixth head. Sixth head.
USA.
Without identity, it doesn't matter who it is, with the
Yeah.
sixth head. If you went to verse 8, I think it is, 17 verse 8, it says, the beast that thou sawest was alive
Yep.
and is not dead
Yep.
and shall ascend or resurrect.
Yes.
So the second state, present tense, is not,
Mm.
is here, number 6. Was,
Yeah.
is not,
Yeah.
and shall ascend. You agree with that?
Yeah, but further on it says the eighth. And
The
then
eighth is a
that's the
separate
abomination
subject.
of the. Okay.
The
Yeah.
eighth
So
has to
5
be
have fallen and 1 is. So.
Five, it's split it into 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
5, 1 is, and 1 is future. So it's split into 3
Yeah.
dispensations.
The 7th is of the 8th anyway. So the 8th. Yeah. So.
No, the 8th is of the 7th.
Of the 7th. That's it. Yeah.
So let's not worry about the 8th. It's only got 7 heads.
Yes.
So it's three dispensations. 1, 2, 3.
Yes. Yeah.
You okay with that?
Mhm.
This one here, if you go to if you go to verse 8 and overlay verse 8 on, the beast was
And is not
what?
dead. No. Pardon?
Brother Stephen? The beast was alive. Verse 8.
Oh, the beast
it was
was.
alive.
Yeah. It was. Yeah.
Is not.
Mhm.
Is not. Oh, is not.
Well,
Is not alive.
yeah. Yeah.
Which means it's dead. Here, it's not alive here.
Yeah. The 6th head.
And shall,
Ascend out of the bottomless pit.
or
which is a
shall
new
resurrect.
manifestation of.
That's that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so here you've got the 6th head,
Mhm.
and the beast is dead.
Yeah.
So does that agree with what you said a minute ago about the dragon and
Well,
holding on to papacy? Just say yes or no if it agrees with what you said.
according to that 6th head,
Just say yes
it
or no.
killed. It killed the
Don't give me a
dragon.
description. Just tell me if you agree, if this model agrees
It's
with
not
what
as
you
easy.
said.
You got to. I got to see the proper picture before I could just agree on it now.
Well, you said, what did you say before?
Yeah, I asked the question. It was kind of like a statement. When a nation embraces a religion, it's
Yeah,
just
so I'm
automatically by
asking you-
default a dragon
Yeah.
religion.
So does that agree with what you said when we look at number 6?
Well, according to that, no.
According to that, yes.
Oh yeah, because the 7th was of the 6th. Yes.
The 7th is not of the
No,
6th.
I can't remember what you said now.
So that agrees. You've got a beast, or a head, should I say.
The state, yeah, the nation.
You've got a state,
Yeah.
but the beast is dead.
Yeah.
Identifying that that state has not done what?
I know, because 1 minute the
Taken
beast
on
is
the
kings, and then it's
Religion,
of the
whatever religion you said,
yeah, whatever it is, yeah.
and it hasn't become a... I may repeat on your words. Hasn't become a dragon. So it's not a dragon here at number 6. It was a dragon here. It's not a dragon here. And what's it going to become here?
The UN,
It's going to become a...
the dragon.
It's going to become a dragon.
Okay, yeah, but it's that verse that 2 horns like a lamb, but he spake as a dragon.
That's that.
So,
That's
yeah, so,
dragon.
yeah, that's
So here. So it's agreeing with what you say.
okay. All right. It's just
So when the state takes on the religion
yeah.
of the
becomes a
papacy,
dragon.
it becomes a
But
dragon.
it's a process. So
Well, no,
but
just
it's
the
in the
statement
same
is
verse.
correct.
okay.
When the state takes on the religion of the papacy, it becomes a dragon. That's why at number 6, the beast is dead, or the dragon is dead. It's not a dragon power.
But the beast in that application is the kings, or the state. So because you've just used so many different applications on the beast, dragons, and nations. That's what I'm just bit unclear at the minute.
Okay.
I need to go over this again, and then it'll be clear in my
Okay,
mind.
but what you're saying was correct.
Okay.
So back to your question, Brother Leon.
Sorry, I think I got lost in that reasoning.
Yeah,
um,
wasn't my fault.
yeah, you went to this Spirit of Prophecy quote.
Okay, so all I'm showing you is that the beast of Revelation 13 can be understood as state or church.
But I was thinking, you know, in the first quote, in the first paragraph, what you read in this from this forest
Yeah.
passage, she mentions a beast with lamb-like horns, but in the second paragraph, she misses out that beast. If you notice that.
Yeah, because the beast with lamb-like horns is not controlled by paganism and it's not controlled by papalism.
But isn't that lamb-like beast America?
Yeah.
So could you say that's a state?
Well,
With
in the
government
first
powers?
paragraph, it's a state.
Sorry?
In the first, it is. The second paragraph says you've got these religious powers that are controlling. What religious power is controlling the lamb-like beast?
Okay.
Nothing. So that's why she's not listing it there. Does that make sense?
No.
No?
I think that reasoning kind of...
So if you do this, so even without explaining it, I don't want to explain it through the Spirit of Prophecy quote itself. We should be able to see it through logic. We've got three beasts. We've got the dragon, we've got the sea beast, and we've got the earth beast. Yeah? And all of them is state. So in the next paragraph, she's going to talk about, I'm going to just call it a singular religious power. Sometimes it looks like pagan religion and sometimes it looks like paper religion. But it's religion. We'll call it church. So the church is in control. So it's in control of this power. Yeah? So we put dragon here. Is it control of this power? Yeah. Is it control of this power? Yeah. Is it? It speaks like a lamb. Or it is a lamb, shouldn't speak like a lamb. No. It's a lamb-like beast. If it's lamb-like, who's controlling it? Paganism or papalism?
I don't know.
Wait, is it paganism that's controlling it?
I don't know.
What does paganism look like? The picture's here. What does it look like?
The state, the top one?
It looks like a dragon. Does the lamb-like beast look like a dragon?
No.
No, it looks like a
Lamb-like beast?
lamb. So it's not controlled by paganism. Okay? So does it look like a leopard?
No.
So it's not controlled by
A leopard.
papalism.
Paper, yeah.
It's not controlled by papalism and it's not controlled by paganism. Because it's a lamb. So it's not controlled by any of those two. So in the paragraph she can't include that beast here because it's not controlled by these churches or this religion. So she can only identify the two of them.
Okay.
The verse then says it speaks like a
dragon.
like a dragon. So then you begin to see it changes. So you could put Earth Beast A and then Earth Beast B in two stages, or 1 and 2. In 2, you could put it there because it's now changed, because it's now like a dragon.
Okay, so you can put it there because it starts speaking like a dragon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So, or it starts to play the function of a dragon.
Yeah. In fact, it becomes the dragon.
Okay. Okay.
And what does a dragon do? It gives power, seat, and authority to what? This beast here. Does that make sense? Wait, wouldn't it be? Wait, there's a blank.
Yeah. Still trying to get
Okay.
my head around it.
But all I wanted to show us that it can be considered church or state. So when we transition and talk about the papacy or the United States or the papacy in France, depending on how you look at it, it can be either one. So we'll just read the whole of the paragraph. Through the great powers controlled by paganism and papalism, symbolized by the dragon and leopard-like beast, Satan for many centuries destroyed God's faithful witnesses. Under the domination of Rome, they were tortured and slain for more than 1,000 years, but the papacy was at last deprived of its strength and forced to desist from persecution. At that time, the prophet beheld a new power coming up, represented by the represented by the beast with lamb-like horns. The appearance of this beast and the manner of his rise seem to indicate that the power which it represents is unlike those brought to view under the preceding symbols. The great kingdoms that have ruled the world obtained their dominion by conquest and revolution, and they were represented to the prophet Daniel as beasts of prey. But the beast with lamb-like horns is seen coming up out of the earth, signifying, instead of the overthrowing of powers, the nation represented arose in territory previously unoccupied and grew up gradually and peacefully. This is a striking representation of our own nation. So hopefully that helps.
So when it says lamb-like beast, well, in the Levite history, the people that actually did have the spirit of God, even though they didn't understand the Holy Spirit. So there was under republicanism and two-born, republicanism and Protestantism. Protestantism did develop into like the Levite movement, and the first name was Meso. So it was a real lamb, the spirit of a real lamb for however long, and then the history that went in by faith. So it's the spirit of a real lamb.
I just want to add a small point onto this. It says, under the dominion of Rome, they were tortured and enslaved for more than 1,000 years, but the papacy was at last deprived of its strength. What was the strength of the papacy? Anyone? But we've got the church here, the papacy. What's its strength? It's the state power. So what does, and Uriah Smith's comment on this is quite nice when he deals with this in verse 40, I think it is. What does France do? What does France do when it has the French Revolution and then it begins to do things? Sorry? No, not persecute the papacy. Not persecute the papacy. What does it do? No. No. No, not in the French Revolution. It's not a verse. Once the French Revolution comes, you've got 1798 and 1799. What does France do?
To take away the papacy's power.
What is the papacy's power? Sorry? No.
Just take away the influence over the state.
Who does France war with? The kings of Europe. If you see them systematically go after country and just basically decimate them, it takes over. And eventually, where does it want to get to? Which country does it want to go for? Before that one. Yes. His failed mission. Russia. He tries to go for Russia, but he fails. So he wants to take over the whole of Europe because Europe is the strength of the papacy. That's why the papacy, is crying for help and there's no one to help it. That's why he can do this work. That's why there's no one to save the papacy.
Not only does she shake off the religious shackles, she continues the decimation of it in all the other countries.
Shaking off the shackles of the papacy wouldn't have done it any good because the European powers would have come and crushed it.
So shake it off of themselves, but that wasn't enough.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If they shook it off and stood an independent nation, the rest of Europe would have come and decimated it. So for France to totally do away with the papacy, it has to do away with its power source.
To wage war unnecessarily. But
No, necessarily, it has to.
to benefit their cause.
But it's doing, it's fulfilling God's will, let me put it that way. It's fulfilling God's will. So I just want to ask one further question. I think people have already hopefully begun to become familiar with this concept. The king of the south, the king of the north here, France, works for whom? No, the king of the north, France, works for whom? In this history, just a concept. Who's its boss? Sorry?
I don't know, you said his gods were Christ. You said he's a Christian.
Well, he did pretend to be baptized by, well, he claimed, but in real life, who is his boss? No, Rome is his wife. Who's his boss? Satan. Okay, so if Satan is his boss as the king of the north, who's his boss as the king of the south?
It doesn't have one.
Okay, so we're familiar with that concept. The king of the south doesn't have a boss. It's not in the same way that we would normally understand a boss. It begins to do its own thing.
Satan still can still send the king of the south on Babylon himself.
I'm not sure if it sends it or it does it or things just happen. And the reason we can see that in chapter 11, the great city, the king of the south, Egypt, Sodom, who does it attack? Thank you. Who does it attack in Revelation 11? Sister Emma? It attacks the two witnesses. Who are the two witnesses? Who? It's God's people. It's God's people. So why is the king of the north attacking God's people, and in the same breath they're attacking the papacy? They attack both. Why is the king of the south attacking the papacy, the king of the north, and God's people? It just seems to do what it wants. It doesn't seem to have any, focus or consistent pattern. It ends up doing what it wants.
Why is it called a new manifestation?
So why is it called a new manifestation of satanic power, Brother Leon? What do you think?
So, microphone. Okay. Are you familiar with the war in heaven with Michael and Lucifer?
Yeah, he's very familiar.
Is he? Okay.
No, seriously, he does. He knows.
Who was Lucifer's boss after the rebellion?
Let him answer.
He didn't have a boss. So he was in rebellion, yeah? So he didn't have a boss. Sorry? Okay, so he rebelled against his own boss.
He's old, he said. He's old boss.
His old boss.
Yeah.
Old boss. So he decided not to be obedient to his old boss. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And chose not to serve him or follow him. So that imagery now, we see that being played out on planet Earth now between the king of the north and the king of the south. What did Lucifer want in heaven?
To be like the Most High.
Sorry?
To be like the Most High.
Where does it teach that?
In Isaiah, chapter 11.
What does Isaiah teach? It says, I will be like, I will
sit on the sides.
I will sit on the sides of the north. Mm-hmm. I will send my throne above the clouds.
Yes.
And so on and so on. So he wanted to be like the Most High. It says, I will be like the Most High. Not the Most High, but it said, I will be like the Most High. And that desire, what he wanted, is fulfilled on earth. So now, we come to planet Earth now, and we see, if you go to Daniel 7, it talks about the man of sin who exalts his throne above the stars, and He's like the man of God. He's like God sitting in the temple of like God. So it's likened to be God on earth. So his desire gets fulfilled on planet Earth. So now, you're familiar with Daniel 11, the warfare between the king of the north and the king of the south.
Yes.
So now, the king of the south wants the title of the king of the north. We see them going back and forth, fighting each other. So think of the imagery in heaven. Lucifer wanted to be like the Most High. He wanted the title of the king of the north. So he began a war with the king of the north in heaven. The king of the south, he wants the title of the king of the north. And we see them fighting on planet Earth. Why is the king of the south fighting? In fact, what did Lucifer use? If I'm wording it correctly. What was it that caused Lucifer to war with Michael?
He wanted to be in the secret. He wanted to be in the same council, to be involved in the councils of God with Jesus and God the Father. He wanted to be involved in that council.
Okay, I could summarize it with one word: rebellion. I can say that's his principle, rebellion. If I'm correct to say that, rebellion. So we see the king of the south using the same principles as Lucifer did in heaven, is using satanic principles to war against the king of the north. It doesn't mean he is Satan or controlled by Satan, but he's using his principles, which is rebellion. Rebellion, I want to be like the king of the north. I will be the king of the north, and so on and so on. So that's how I explain that quote, where Ellen says, a new manifestation of satanic power. It doesn't mean he's controlled by Satan, but he's using Satan's principles, because we see the same warfare being repeated on planet Earth. What first began in heaven. So Satan is getting, he's seen him. You can say he's seen himself is behaving in heaven, being played out in the king of the south. So what he did in heaven, we see it in the king of the south. We see it in the king of the south's behavior. So it's getting a taste of its own medicine on planet Earth, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
So if you know there's more in heaven about Lucifer and the king of the north, that's the same story here.
Yeah, it's trying to...
Okay, so you just use the same logic that I used.
I know, but...
Okay, that's good, just as long as you see that.
Yeah.
Because he used to work with him and then he rebelled.
Yeah.
And then they fight against each
Yeah,
other.
it's making sense.
So the argument in heaven is that when Lucifer rebels and becomes Satan, he becomes the king of the south.
Yeah. So Satan was once with the king of the north then, in heaven. Yeah, he was working with the king of the north. Then he decided to, okay, let me depart. I want this title. I want to be the boss.
Yeah.
But he failed.
So the war happens because he becomes the king of the south, and they begin to fight over the title of the king of the north.
Yeah.
Which is the same story that's being played out here.
Yeah.
And the punchline of your point in that is, if you argue that he's fighting against Christ, and you can go to Spirit Prophecy quotes that tell you that he was willing to bow down to the Father but not to the Son, that Christ's boss, if you're willing to say it that way, was the Father, but Lucifer's or Satan's boss is no one. He does things on his own. So you see this idea that he's this independent atom that does his own thing.
Yeah.
The king of the south does not have a boss.
Yeah. Another thought I had, if you understand Fatima, and Satan wanted Russia to be consecrated or to be obedient. It's the same in heaven. The Father wanted Satan to be obedient, to come back on his side. That's why he's pleading. We see Christ pleading with Satan to, come back on the right side of the issue and be obedient. So it's the same warfare. You see it in Fatima.
Can you explain that a bit better? Not better. In more detail.
More detail.
People won't see the connection you're making.
Okay, I'm not well versed on Fatima, but what I do know about Fatima is
Who is whom?
So, okay, Satan, the king in the north, wants Russia, the king in the south, to be obedient. And in heaven, the king in the north, or the father, wants Lucifer to be obedient. Does that make sense?
And who pleads with Lucifer in heaven?
Jesus.
Jesus. And who's pleading with Russia, if you like?
Is it the
Fatima.
Is it the who is it?
Or
The papacy? No. Is it the children?
I'm asking you. I don't know how we...
I think it's the children, because the children receive a vision from, you can say, Satan.
The children's message comes through the papacy, isn't it? The Pope translates the message, realizing that this message needs to be given
Okay, does the Pope translate the message given to the children? To the church. And this is to consecrate Russia, if that's clear.
Does anybody have any points? Oh,
It's
just
well, it's a point. It's about an observation. When Satan said he wants to sit in the sides of the north, all the angels were there. Right? The whole makeup of heaven was in the north. There was no south. But the fact that Satan wanted to rebel, automatically he now becomes the south, which is a negative point, because the north is negative position. Is that right? Okay.
Mr. Cedric?
Yeah, it is.
To ask, is it possible not to have a boss? Is it possible just to think? I mean, where do the thoughts come from anyway? I mean, I thought they were just kind of like God's thoughts and Satan's thoughts. So either way, whoever you choose, that's your boss. I didn't realize you could kind of like work on your own with no real leader
Are you
behind.
sure you didn't realise that? Because when you'd studied vow number 12, you were led through a careful study that showed you that that's the very point. So you never have your own thoughts, I take it?
I thought we don't have our own thoughts.
So I'm asking you, you never have your own thoughts?
No, we do. I thought, I'm sure I read something in the Spirit of Prophecy about our thoughts being either from God or Satan.
So you don't have your own ones?
But we choose. So
you don't have your own ones?
Not really. But yes, I'm sure we do.
So you don't have any self-management?
Yes, we do have self-management.
Then if it's self-management, whose thoughts are those ones?
Your own. But they do come from somewhere, isn't it?
Then they're not your ones.
So that's how I'm finding it hard to figure out how Russia cannot have a...
Well,
a
no, I'm addressing the point. You just said that they're your own thoughts, and then you said they're not your thoughts.
Because...
But they're either yours or they're not. You can't say, I borrowed them from somebody and then they're
I
mine.
chose to think that way.
Are they your thoughts or someone else's? Someone can offer you and say, okay, I'll accept what you're giving me, which is different to having it or it being your own to begin with. There's a gift and there's wages. They're different. So are the thoughts yours or are they given to you from someone?
I suppose if I'm actually thinking that way, then they are mine. But
Not borrowed, not given.
I thought they were given.
So then they're not yours.
Well, that's where I'm getting a bit confused.
So which one do you want to go with? that you don't have any thoughts that are all given to you, either from God or from Satan,
And that
or
you
that you've
choose.
got your own ones? Which model do you believe in?
That I do choose.
I'm not
I do
asking
get
you.
you.
I'm not asking which ones you choose. I'm asking the thoughts. Are they your thoughts, or are they all God's or Satan's, and
Oh,
they're
that's
given
what
to
I
you?
thought. I thought.
So which?
they were
So
all-
you go for that model.
Yeah.
You don't have any of your own thoughts.
Yes, I do.
You just said you
So
don't.
yeah, I'm getting confused.
No, but you understand the two arguments.
Yes.
So I'm just want to know.
yes,
I just want you
yeah,
to pick which model you want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do understand the two thoughts.
You understand the two models.
Yeah.
So which model do you believe in?
That I think after you explain it a bit, it sounds like they are my thoughts. Although, yeah, they are my thoughts.
Without an although.
Sorry.
Without an although. There's either your thoughts, model one, or they're not your thoughts and you get them from someone.
But then where do our thoughts?
Oh,
really-
just tell me which
Okay.
model you want to go
Okay,
for.
okay. They,
I'll tell you the implications
Okay.
afterwards.
I'm just trying to be responsible here, so they must be my thoughts.
Okay, let's go to the story that Brother Leon gave us. You're in heaven now, and your name is Lucifer, okay? And you start having bad thoughts, yeah?
Yeah,
Who gave you the bad thoughts?
himself. He gave his own. He
gave him
gave
the-
himself his
Okay,
own thoughts.
so come down 6,000 years later, and you've got a bad thought. Where did you get it from?
That's what I chose to believe.
You got it from yourself, like
Yeah.
he got it from himself.
Yeah.
You don't need anyone to give you good or bad thoughts. They're your own thoughts. Otherwise, you'd be just like a robot.
But wouldn't you still have a boss because you're not thinking in a godly way?
Well, who's Lucifer's boss when he sins?
He, because he's the originator of sin. isn't
He's
he?
his own boss.
Yeah.
So you don't believe in line upon line, or Alpha and Omega, the beginning from the end.
Yes.
If he's his own boss, then you're your own boss. So your rebellion is your fault, not Satan's fault. You take responsibility for what you do, good or bad.
Yeah. I just always thought that there were two modes of thoughts that you could choose from.
But who gives them to you if it's two choices? Lucifer, he's going to choose the bad ones. Where's he choosing it from? Who's giving them to him?
Himself.
Then you do it yourself too.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yep. It was Sister Carol Lee first, I believe.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is I didn't find the verse or the spiritual prophecy, but they said that Satan cannot read your thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it shows that you have got thoughts that you're thinking things that he has no control over.
Yeah, good point.
I was going to say, so could you have your thoughts and Satan could try and influence those thoughts? No, he can't influence your mind. Oh, no. Sorry, he can influence your mind, but he can't read your mind. Sorry.
He's invited.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing that he couldn't give you a thought. He may
Yeah.
well be able to do that. He may well be able to influence you. But if we start saying that all the thoughts are not ours, we absolve ourselves of all responsibility. And the great controversy doesn't work.
Yeah.
So hopefully we've proven that the King of the South, a unique characteristic about this entity is that they essentially work for themselves. They don't work for Satan, they don't work for God. They just do their own thing. And they use satanic principles to do that. And you can take that concept straight back to the origins of the great controversy. For when Lucifer falls, he becomes the king of the south. If we're going to use a symbology that we're familiar with. Yes. The seed of the serpent. Well, the king of the north's boss is always the same person. It's always Satan. He just is disobedient to his boss. Yeah, and so have we. We've been disobedient too. We've been disobedient too to our boss. We're still children of God. That's right, but it never will work. And we can see this. We see the same characteristics with Islam. Same characteristics with Islam. Every man's hand is against him, and he's against every man's hand. Messenger. The angel of Thyatira, the angel of Laodicea. Messenger. A leader. Sister Emma?
I just wanted to go back to the original question. Is that the man of sin? I just wanted to go back to the man of sin. Can we say then that the man of sin is equal to King of the North? So if man of sin is man of Satan, then whenever you've got the title King of the North, you are the man of sin. So depending on what model you're looking at, it's the papacy, but it could be France in that model. That he's the man of sin. He's working for Satan in that sense.
So if we see today, what's our test? If we see that it's two streams. So the two streams are two worldviews, if we can say it that way. One worldview is this one, and one worldview is another one. And each worldview has how many components? There's two worldviews. Each view has how many components? Has three components. The three components are what? Conspiracy theories, race, and gender. Okay? So if we're being tested on this, and it's the everlasting gospel, three-step prophetic test, we're being tested whether or not we're sinning, or whether we're not sinning. You can see it that way. We talk about the sins of our fathers, so we know it's sin. So if you're on the wrong side of this issue, it will be considered sin, or race, or gender. If you get the wrong answer, it can be considered sin. And who is the man that's driving this worldview that's wrong? Sister Emma? President of the United States, or the United States, is driving this wrong worldview. So he's the man that's driving us to do sin. So he can be considered the man of sin. The reason why we would choose the papacy to be the man of sin, and we're yet to have to develop good models to know what it will end up looking like. And I'm not saying that I have full understanding of it, but the reason we choose the papacy to be the man of sin at the end of the world is because we say the test is what? Sabbath, Sunday issue. That's what the test is. And he's the one that's driven that in the past. So he's the man that's committing sin and making you commit sin. So he becomes the man of sin. So it depends what the test is to define who the man of sin is. So with our current model, if everything was to wrap up on November the 9th this year, who would be the king of the north and who would be the man of sin, I think we have clear evidence it would be the United States. As time develops, that understanding may or may not change. But we do know that by 2019, then into, as you go into 2020 and 2021, or into Panium and into the Sunday law, that you get a revolution, a pause, and a counter-revolution. I think we're familiar with that, at least at a conceptual level. And in that counter-revolution where there's going to be this struggle for supremacy, who will arise the victor in that story? Who will win? The king. Okay, I'm just going to say the United States, or the papacy, the presidency, Donald Trump, which is the king of the north. So the story of this man doesn't end in 2019. It goes all the way to the Sunday law, and it's the story of the rise of the United States as it transitions from the sixth head to the seventh head. You could, I guess technically you'd argue the demise or the death of the United States, although the United States becomes more and more powerful, while it becomes more and more weak at the same time, depending on how you understand the democratic republic and the dictatorship as it transitions from one to another. As the king of the south dies and the United States or the king of the north rises to power, it's all the story of the king of the north all the way through until you get to the Sunday law. And what we need to remember is, how many Sunday laws will there be before you get to Daniel 11 verse 41? Before you get to how many Sunday laws will there be? There'll be 3 Sunday laws.